Thank you, Helen. And I'm good. Yeah, I'm good after the vaccination, so I'm good to go. It's lovely to be here. I've really enjoyed the last 4 or 5 weeks attending these things. So here we go. The only weird thing is that I can't stand up. Like I was saying, it's a bit of a weird situation to be in. Just sat down. But I'm gonna read from a sequence exploring the joys and the pressures that fatherhood puts on a couple. And I think it's a kind of underrepresented theme in poetry, the male perspective on this. I think there was Hector in the Iliad, and then that was kind of it until about now. Um, so the first poem I'm going to read is about your desire to keep a child safe in the 21st century, even though you can't, and how you might even tempt fate in a way to kind of make harm not happen to your child. Um, and there's two references I need to explain first. The first one is to St. Hugh of Wells, who I saw in a stained glass window. He used to parade with a swan on a golden tether, and just sort of like people would remark at this man. Um, that's St. Hugh of Wells. The other one is Quarterjacks. And if you go to Launceston, Charles Causley's sort of stomping ground, they say that you can hear the Quarterjacks across the river if it's going to rain. So it's a kind of sign of rain that you can actually hear these things. And the last thing I need to say before I start is that I've got a daughter, so there's lots of references to crossing the path and leaving the path and that kind of thing. So this is called a preservation spell. Should sandal pass the chalk outline, the lamp's limit, should the ribbons fall, draw your passage from the world, then it is all like snow. The lie, no indicator of depth where it settles, laughter tumbling as the body tips face down. And our calculations come in hunches, the strike of the quarterjacks crossing the river in imminence of rain. The devil sat in his hammock just beneath the nail. Remember the animals in our windows at the knees of the saints, how they reflect each one's pomposity and grace. The goose at the end of a golden cord, the man himself set for a parade to demonstrate his quiddity. We secured your knowledge to follow men like them. So pride does not come into it. If you prosper, it has little to do with our handiwork. Regardless how we sank canes into the soil, ran channels, led you by your open hand. Our superstitions, the stuff of donkeys hung from trees, cotton sewn through lips, and mountain lions, in defiance of which we tease out your locks like seedlings, dress you in linens tailored in a feminine style. And when we had our daughter, Amelia, when she was born, it was by cesarean section. And so we kind of went in the morning, and about 7:30, we hadn't eaten, we weren't allowed to eat. It was a sympathetic pregnancy, I wasn't allowed to eat. And we just knocked around till about 3 o'clock. And then we went in, came out very quickly into this cubicle. We had a daughter. And I greeted, my father-in-law, hugged him, and night fell. And then I thought, holy crap, I've got to walk the dog. So I kind of went down, got in, went to the car park, drove home. And I used to love walking the dog at night. I felt very like Ted Hughes until, after a few times, you'd hear that kind of sort of sound. The dog would run off and there'd be badgers, and you'd fear that there'd be a kind of, a battle between my dog Mabel and the badgers. And I also got the sense that you were kind of stepping on their territory, like all the owls and the deer and the rabbits, and it was their kind of thing. So anyway, this is a poem about kind of coming back, walking the dog later than usual. It's called Crossing the Owl's Bridge, which is a reference to death in Mexican folklore. Crossing the Owl's Bridge. Oh, I should say as well, we had this sort of day-by-day pregnancy guide that was very anti-men, and it also sort of ran out of stuff in the third trimester. So it was kind of going on about how you shouldn't let owls. Virgil says you shouldn't let owls into the birthing room or it will jinx your child's life. So it's called Crossing the Owl's Bridge. So I took the circular path, wary as Mabel sniffed the grass, that this was a time for badgers. And she knew something extraordinary had happened, keeping close to me, the hushed lanes and closed rock roses. Keep the owl from the birthing room, the day-by-day pregnancy guide told us, grown fancy with folklore, brimful with vernix, lashes, and harbingers of doom. Don't forget, its focus on men corrected. It's not all about you. As I left theatre, a nurse slotted my mobile back in my palm. I retraced the scene, how the poorly administered cannula hurt more than the lumbar puncture, how there was always a risk of bleeding, how the green plastic sheet spread, separating upper and lower halves, occluding the view, non-absorbent. Finally, we came to the straight where the alley goes deep, becomes a holloway overcast with trees, warrens built into banks of clay. Your pitch of voles and baby rabbits. Owl heard among houses to herald the fall of unmarried maidens. Ibu Grand Duc with full epaulettes, down covering feet and legs right to the leading edge of the wing. You dispatch almost in silence. Incubate your clutch alone. Dive bomb us now, secure your tunnel, bloody our milk. We are sorry to set foot on your patch. For now our vulnerable bellies are exposed. Sometimes I play with your reach, hold a fingertip to a flame, face to the water, slip one leg then another over the ticker tape to keep out. And do I detect you, who can live to 16 but rarely make 2, also wear a band, carved against your innermost talon, contracting you, even as it marks you out for death. You who call to give us fair warning, who try to keep us clear. And it's long poems for me today. Ever since the poems about trees a few weeks ago at Life Canon, I really enjoyed the sort of narrative of the stories, just listening to stories in the poems. So this is my last poem. This is way back, this is pre-COVID, when things happened like earthquakes in Bridgewater. And it references two things. One is, I could never understand how my daughter, even at 12 months, was able to recognize that from the sound of applause. So if we were listening to Aretha Franklin, say, and the congregation applauded, like, my pre-speech child would reach and go, and I just never understood how she could put the two together. And the second thing is we bought a lamb, and we were given, from a sort of fledgling farmer, and we were given all these hearts, these lamb hearts. And we used to give them to the dog, and of course we realized too late that it caused incredible diarrhea in the dog. So this is my last poem. This is called Epicenter. One of your best traits, a readiness for cheering. In Little Women, for example, as the extempore ding-dong merrily on high trails off, a motorway thinning to a single lane, you are there to applaud, catching the flame like an Olympic torch. It's a long film, and Beth is not even dead yet. In musical movement, you give your all. Your single-minded dance is intended, strangely sumo. After you handed Mabel the lamb hearts in her bowl, entire, we stood agape, juice spurting from the purple muscle, the dog's jaws working to gain purchase and soar. Felt exuberant, not considering the after ripple which would surely come. That evening, when her whimpering climbed the stairs, you were dead to the world. And later, as Somerset was rocked by a 4.3, your mother and I could hear the plates 10 miles down, the epicenter over in Bridgewater. And she stood in silence, strangely moved at the Juliet balcony. I was excluded, like when we arrived at the new house and she could not, would not hear me. The following morning, the radio informed us of what had been, and we lowered the piano lid, having run our hands along the keys. Thank you so much.